Welcome, rugby fans, to Rugby 411. I am your host, as always. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is a special video. Recently, it was announced by the Dallas Jackals that on Sunday, March 20th, the Dallas Jackal team unfortunately had a horrific event occur to the team, an off field event that resulted in several players falling off of a collapsed walkway. According to the GM Elaine Vassy, 9 players fell about 7 feet off of a walkway that they were walking on that collapsed underneath them. In total, 16 players were injured. Sadly, the injuries stem from minor to unfortunately some very serious injuries, including 5 players who have been deemed seriously injured. 2 of them, Mo Abdelmomen, a flanker, and Henry Trinder, a center, unfortunately are having to undergo season-ending surgery due to the injuries they sustained in this horrific event. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is because this event that happened off field. And again, this is horrible for the Dallas Jackals, the newest team of the Major League Rugby, who have already been struggling quite a bit this season. They have yet to secure their very first win of their inaugural season in Major League Rugby, having 16 players injured in an off-field event. 16 players, that's pretty much an entire rugby team plus 1 player on the bench. It would be catastrophic, would really mean that the Dallas Jackals, would not be able to play a game, their next game being in a couple of days against the LA Guiltinis at the world-famous LA Coliseum. There'd be no way for the Dallas Jackals to play. But the Dallas Jackals have announced that several teams in Major League Rugby have actually lent them several players on short-term loan. So that, I know, is something that a lot of people have been asking me, what exactly is going on here with this short-term loan? Why would any team loan players, their own players, to a team that they're going to compete against or they are competing with in a chance to make the playoffs for the end of the season? So that's what this video is all about. We're discussing why would rugby teams, loan players to other teams. So hopefully can make this video and explain it. It is a concept that's very foreign, especially to us American fans. Especially with American sports, American sports are very much about rivalries. We play against each other, and I feel that players in American sports are not very likely to hang out with players from opposite teams after games or during the off season. There may be a sense of camaraderie between players in American sports, but I don't feel it's that close to each other. Now, on the flip side, I've always described rugby to fans, new fans, American fans, as a sport where you have players playing very aggressively against each other on the field, but then off the field, they will share a pint of beer and a meal with those same exact players right after the game. It's something that has been long in the culture and tradition of rugby, dating back to the beginning of rugby's roots in Europe. And it's something that is still held on to today. If you've ever been to a live rugby match, you will see after the game, the rugby players from both teams will pretty much talk with each other and hang out and chill, and if you didn't know any better, you would think they were all on the same team, like it was a practice scrimmage, not an actual game. Regardless of how aggressive some players are, and there are some really aggressive players on the field, it's amazing how quickly they can turn around and be very friendly with each other after the game. And that sense of camaraderie between rugby players is something that is spread out even to the managements and to the teams themselves. And again, this is something that's very, very big in international rugby, and I feel it is also still being used now here in America with Major League Rugby, which again, very, very different and kind of foreign to American fans who are used to American sports, where again, players will probably more than likely just not hang out with those players that they just played against or got beaten by. It's just kind of not an American thing. So, with that being said, the process of loaning players is a very common practice in Europe and international rugby. Whenever a team, here in America, when teams get injuries, especially like American football, they usually will go to their practice squad or they'll go to free agency. They just pick up new players to replace. In rugby, that process is still the same. They usually go through their academy or like their minor league in baseball, but the talent pool in rugby is not necessarily that big, and especially with Major League Rugby, it's very, very small. So it's not so easy to get players when your players are getting hurt, and rugby is a very brutal sport. Events like this don't happen very often, but there could be teams that are ravaged with a lot of injuries, and they may need a player or two to kind of fill in the gaps. And so teams will lend short term those players to other teams. And again, this is also to help promote not only this camaraderie, but gamesmanship. Again, if the Dallas Jackals could not get these players on loan, more than likely they would have to forfeit or concede at least a couple of matches. Definitely the match that's coming up against the LA Guiltinis, which is not really that fair. And, to, again, promote gamesmanship, teams are helping out the Dallas Jackals by allowing them a chance to continue playing, to not have to forfeit, and to have everybody play. Rugby has always been known as the most inclusive sport. It doesn't matter your creed, your color, your sexual orientation, anything like that. Everyone can play rugby. Everyone should have the ability to play rugby. Even teams that have injuries should be able to play and man a squad. So again, this is a very common practice. And how the loan works is that when a team loans another team a player, it's a short-term loan. It's not indefinite. It's for however long that team needs the player, or if the team who originally lent the player to that team needs the player to come back, so say they have injuries or they need to fill their depth, they can get that player to come back. They obviously have to give a heads up to the team that they lent the player to. So, for example, NOLA lent Jack Webster a center to the Dallas Jackals. If NOLA needs Jack Webster back, they have to give the Dallas Jackals heads up before they take him back. But they can do that. Sometimes some players that are lent on loan stay for quite a bit of time, and sometimes those players end up joining that team in the offseason because the fit seemed to go so well. Now, these players that are on loan, and I'm going to go through a list of them, are not technically star players. They're usually not going to be your starters, but they're going to be players that are, either on the bench or maybe a little bit low on the depth chart. Definitely, obviously, players that these teams can lend without hurting their own roster. But still, capable players. They have to be able to play the sport on a bigger stage. So there are three players that were lent to Dallas. Carson Shoemaker from Utah, who is a back rower. Chilean international player who's been capped 16 times for the Chilean team. This Chile team is actually one that beat Canada just recently for the Rugby World Cup qualifier, and they'll be playing against the United States for a spot in the upcoming Rugby World Cup in 2023. Augusto Bohm from Seattle, who is a hooker, is on loan. And as I mentioned before, Jack Webster from NOLA is a center. Also, NOLA has traded Charlie Hola to Dallas, so this is not a loan. He's actually traded to Dallas for some salary cap consideration. Charlie Hola is a lock or flanker. So again, the positions that these players play, especially flanker and center, Mo Abdelboumen is a flanker, Henry Trinder is a center. Both of those players, as I mentioned before, are going to be out for the rest of the season because of the tragic event that happened. So these players that are on loan are filling a need for the Dallas Jackals. And again, without these players, the Dallas Jackals would probably not be able to field a capable team for their next couple of games. So it gives the Dallas Jackals a chance to continue competing. it's again, the loaning process doesn't happen too often. It's been happened recently, especially in Europe, because of COVID. Recently has really wrecked a lot of rosters, but I find it fascinating because it really does add a different feeling to the sport. Something that you don't find at all in America. It gives it definitely a more of an international feel and just shows you exactly the kind of the camaraderie and the gamesmanship of a sport like rugby, where it's not necessarily all about winning. It's really giving every player and every team a chance to compete, and I find that amazing. So hopefully the Dallas Jackals, hopefully their luck will turn around again. They've been struggling all season. This is horrific. There's been no word of any legal ramifications from the event. No real word exactly what happened or why the players were on this walkway and why it fell. But again, it's a lot of positivities and prayers from us here at Rugby 411 to the Dallas Jackals. Hopefully, the players that are hurt will come back as quickly as possible. And again, sucks for Mo Abdelmonem and Henry Trinder, who will be out for the remainder of the season. Possibly a couple of other players might as well. It's horrible. But again, hopefully the Dallas Jackals' luck will turn around soon, because it's been a struggle for them. But yeah, so hopefully this whole loaning process, again, it's not super complex, but it is definitely different from American sports. Hopefully this can kind of shed a light, and again, it's fascinating. It's very interesting to see this done. I don't know if this could ever be done in other American sports. Again, the roster depth of American sports is a little bit bigger. You have your minor leagues, you have your developmental teams, your practice squads. So really, the looking for a player, I don't think you'll ever have to get a loan from someone. But rugby, it's a very interesting concept and an interesting practice. And again, I think it's great that the Dallas Jackals are able to get some players to play after such a horrific event. So anyways, let me know what you think of the video. Let me know what you think about this whole process. I know, especially for American fans, it's very new and foreign. And again, it's very interesting. And thank you very much for watching this video. And I'll see you on the pitch.